Despite the transfer portal additions not being done yet, why Florida State is already a transfer portal winner.
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back into Locked On Seminoles. I am your host, Brian Smith. Thank you for making this your first listen each and every day. And I truly do appreciate everybody coming in to check it out. Hope you enjoyed today's show. We're going to focus on the additions that Florida State has had in the transfer portal, give a little bit of a background on some of these guys, and then compare Florida State to some of the other teams, where they stand, and why Florida State's trending, quite honestly, in a better direction than most of the teams in the college football landscape that truly has a chance at a national championship. Today's show is brought to you by Monopoly Go. This fast-paced game lets you team up with your friends in tournaments and go in and unlock awesome prizes like unique stickers for trading, cool playing pieces, and hilarious emojis for taunting your friends. Download Monopoly Go now for free on Google Play or the App Store. So Florida State has built their program very uniquely. This is not a first-time mention on this show. It's something I mentioned in some capacity, probably on a lot of shows. And if you take nothing else away from it today, nothing else that I say, take the following. Florida State has continued to be very selective and very poignant with what they want and what they receive out of the portal. And it's the difference between winning at a moderate pace, meaning like 7 to 8, maybe 9 wins, and now being a program that like 9 should pretty much be the bottom, barring just completely unforeseen injuries at key spots or just a ton of players going out at one position and getting picked on because of it. This is a program that's doing it the right way. And I got a lot of stats and things to go through, but I'm going to more or less just kind of guide you in the sense of here's why Florida State has figured it out, and here's the proof. I've got numbers on how many players are coming in for Florida State and other schools and how many players are going out. And there's a little bit of a surprise, I think, for myself and for hopefully many of you as well. I think it will be. It's actually not a bad thing to have a lot of guys going out. In other words, players that didn't cut it, players that got in trouble, guys that didn't want to put in the work or build into the team locker room environment, whatever it may be. Every school's got something different. We'll get to that in a second. But here's the biggest thing. They only lost 2 guys from the roster that could have been back, for 24, that I would be like, you know what, if we could reverse, Florida State would do better if these 2 guys came back. Now, there's a couple others on the fringe, but the 2 I'm talking about are Greedy Vance, the DB. He ended up transferring to Southern Cal. He would have played, no doubt about that. And the other was Marcus and Douglas Biscuit, if you will, 285-pound tight end that can move. So here are a couple of the stats. It's only 2 guys. I'll just get these out of the way. Biscuit, 11 catches, 130 yards, 12.4 yards a catch, 2 touchdowns. But more importantly, it's rare to have guys that big. He's good in the run game. He actually got pretty good hands, 12.4 yards a catch, not bad for a tight end. And he's a guy that's very situational. Goal line, short yardage, or anytime you wanted to throw one up, you could use him as an option. With Keon being gone, with Jaheim being gone, and with Johnny being gone, Florida State was going to look a little more differently at the tight end position. Now, I don't know what Florida State thought of him, but this is just my opinion. I would have liked to have had him back. Looking at what Florida State has at tight end, I think they could have done more 12 personnel sets, 1 running back, 2 tight ends, and been effective in short yardage and power football situations, and then the play action comes into play. Just my take. The other guy, Greedy Vance, he's played in 44 college football games. He'll be a 5th-year senior at Southern Cal. Just in 2023 alone, here are the stats for Mr. Vance. 18 tackles, 3 passes broken up, 1 interception, 360 snaps played, for the Noles. He is a guy that can play corner or nickel. That versatility, that experience, that proven production, it would have been better for him to come back. So that's just 2 guys I picked. And again, I was being selective, but those are 2. Now, when you flip the switch and you think, well, how many did they gain and what's the total sum, et cetera, we're getting into that next. And I think it's really this kind of the culmination of why Florida State has figured it out, and they're just so good at figuring, okay, Here's a guy that went to Alabama or Georgia or wherever, didn't work out there. We have proven that we can take guys like this and make it happen. And they got guys to come from those schools, big-time schools like Alabama, Georgia. Malik Benson, for instance, comes down from Alabama. He looks like clearly the number one receiver for Florida State this next year, just going by the spring showcase. They figured it out. I don't understand exactly how Norvell and his staff do it, but give them credit. Here, just by position, just going to start a quarterback. You think about these are the number of guys just off the top of my head that I went down. I just wrote down at least one guy at each spot here that could start or should start for Florida State out of this year's portal so far. And again, the portal closed yesterday, but that's just to get your name in it. When you sign is a different deal. It's per school, like when you got to be enrolled to get into classes, etc. It's a different deal. So you got DJ Uyunglele, played 4 years, 3 of which were at Clemson, 1 at Oregon State. He's been a multi-year starter. He's a guy that has a lot of talent. Obviously, Florida State did well to get DJ. At running back, it's really unique because they got Jalen Lucas, one of my favorite players to watch. Very athletic, can play slot or running back. And they also got, again, here's shocker, they got a player from Alabama, Odell Williams, really talented guy between the tackles. So you didn't get one, but you got 2 guys to help offset the loss of a guy who goes third round, and Trey Benson. And you give yourself a variety pack as well with a key running back. It's an every down guy, then another player that could be a punt returner, kick returner, slot, screen guy, jet motion, etc. Receiver, I mentioned Benson. Long-term, don't be surprised if Jaylen Brown ends up being a starter. Played at Gulliver Prep in Miami. He can fly. He's one of the fastest kids I've ever seen in high school. He just runs by guys. But getting him in, Benson, it shows that they're looking, immediate impact is Benson. Junior college player, went to Bama, did okay, but didn't have huge stats. He comes in, and it's pretty obvious he's got a connection with DJ. And then Brown, the kid that played at LSU last year, comes over to Florida State. Excuse me. All kinds of talent. Just needs to get bigger and stronger, but you can't teach the speed, and he's a natural pass catcher. I think he'll do very well. I would like to see them get a tight end, even if it's just another role player. I would prefer if Landon Thomas doesn't have to play a ton of snaps in the run game in particular. Freshmen do not block well as a general rule, and he's a special talent, but he's going to have to play as it is. But if they could get another guy to help out in that role, it would be nice. They got West and other guys. I get it, but I would like to see him get one tight end. That's the only spot they haven't added somebody, in my opinion, that's like a definitive guy that's going to help a ton. Maybe you could go there if I want to be picky. Moving over to defensive line, Marvin Jones Jr. They got Wohia, and I'm going to totally butcher this name. I have no idea how to say his first or last name. Duroger, the lineman from West Virginia, had 5 sacks last year. You got 3 different guys that are capable of starting, that have the numbers, have the talent, have the background to be starters. 3. Not many teams are able to get 1 defensive lineman in the portal like that. The Noles got 3. There are very few defensive linemen that go into the portal that teams want. So I talked a minute ago about this staff doing a good job of evaluating. Now, there's still some evaluation there, and a lot of it's shoulder up, meaning are you going to fit in our program? Are you going to cause any problems? And that has to be a checkbox. If it's in question and you're at the level that Florida State's at now, it's no. You got to go. You can't risk your locker room. So if they got 3 already, that's a great sign. Obviously, Marvin Jones is the one most people are curious about because his father was so successful. I believe he was the 3rd or 4th pick in the draft in like 95, 96, something like that. Really great player, and his son is now transferred into Florida State. But the other kid that was at Oregon State was even more successful. The kid at West Virginia has been more successful. And then you got Jones with the natural length, size, and strength coming out of American Heritage via Georgia that is now with Florida State. It's unbelievable how much they've added at one position. I would say it's arguably as good a spot for any school in the country because you're getting not 1, not 2, but 3 guys that can be starters. Florida State really did themselves a favor. Then they get another Alabama guy. They got Sean Murphy, who was an elite recruit, a kid that's competing for a starting spot at one of their least productive positions in terms of numbers, and that's linebacker. Florida State had 2 really good seniors last year, and while DeLoach and Tatum were really good players, and I know they got guys coming back that have some experience, that played a little bit. It was nice to get another athletic, big frame guy. Elite recruit. Everybody offered him out of the state of Virginia when he came out. Signed with Bama. Didn't work out there over 2 years. Florida State's got a track record with this. I'll trust them to get it done. And again, He was the guy that was a borderline 5-star player. That's a big help. Then you go over and you look at the secondary, and this is where it's really unique. Yes, they did lose, and again, there's no doubt in my mind they'd have been better off if Greedy would have stayed. There's not much you can do about it, but one of the reasons he didn't is Earl Little Jr. came in. He's a guy that's trending ahead of him at the same spot, playing nickel. He could play also outside, whatever. And they also got Devontae Brown from Miami. He's a guy that didn't have a big year last year for the Canes. They're trying him out at safety. This is another one of the mad scientist ideas with Norvell and his staff. I think that's a really, really good way to do it. Let him try different things. Maybe it'll work out, maybe it won't. But Florida State gets another depth piece. It's a really talented player that's a fifth-year guy. He's from South Florida. It's a really good way to do it, and I think Florida State is going to do well with it. Coming up next, we're going to be talking a little bit about the numbers. Who did you sign is one thing, but how many did you lose, and is it a good or bad thing? I'm going to actually need the help of some of you on this because I want opinions because I don't think these are dead set answers. We're going to talk about that next here on Locked On Seminoles. It's winner take all time in the NBA and the NHL, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any $5 winning bet. That's $150 to get on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Let's talk a little bit about numbers with the portal. Sometimes people just look at it in a perspective of how many did we gain, how many did we lose? Just a generic, bare bones approach, and that's fine. But here at Locked On Seminoles, we want to bring you in every day for a reason. You get some detail, get some idea. And again, as I said right before the break, going to need your help and want some opinion. Please share your thoughts on YouTube. I'm curious about this because I'm honestly open-ended. These are just the numbers of how many guys a school assigned and how many have left. Now, part of these, a few of these kids at most schools that are leaving, et cetera, are walk-ons or guys that were towards the bottom that weren't great. But almost all these schools are losing a couple of guys at least, if not 3 or 4 that are really good. Just tell me what you think about it when I mention the school and if it's what you thought, because we've discussed culture recently. If culture is not good, kids leave, things get really, really hectic, and your program can descend in a hurry. Florida State, let's start with the Noles. They've got 15 guys in and 26 out. This is just going off some of the stuff. I got like 24/7 and on 3. Is it a good thing or a bad thing? I'm going to come back to them. I'm not going to give any specifics beyond that. Just want you to think. So that's a difference of 11 more going, according to them. Is that bad or is that good? Auburn, also same kind of differential. 13 in, 24 out. Notre Dame, 9 in, 18 out. Miami, this one's wild. 13 in, 33 out. I'm assuming I didn't go through the list completely, but having over 30, I would assume there's a few kids that are walk-ons there. Southern Cal, 14 in, 29 out. Arkansas, 17 in, 34 out. Now, that's a program, again, we talk about culture. They were really, really, really close to firing their head coach last year. I think that's part of the reason. They lost a quarterback included, transferred to UCF. So let's circle back around to Florida State. Now, I just mentioned some of the guys they had coming in, and just top of my head here, I'm going to say quarterback, receiver. That's at least 2 starters, at least 1 of the defensive ends. That's 3. Guy like Brady Kelly could end up starting a little bit. That's an additional guy. They got a defensive tackle. I didn't even mention him. Linebackers, a really good chance. Murphy, Brown, or Little. You're going to have about 5 or 6 guys that are starters, have experience at prominent programs like Georgia, Alabama, Clemson, coming into your program, West Virginia. You're going to have all of them on your roster. How many teams do you really think did something similar to that? Very few, in my opinion. So when I look at that and then I see the 15 in, 26 out, and of course I went through the list there a second ago. When I first saw it, I was concerned, but then I looked at the list a little bit. I mean, it's the Florida State list. I went and did a little more to educate myself, but I don't think many teams hit as many starters. I'm not saying Florida State has the number 1 portal class, because that's not what's important to begin with. And number 2, you got to balance it with high school recruiting. Like Colorado's number 1 on everybody's board. but they're still going to be terrible because they don't recruit high school very well at all. I'm being kind. Colorado will probably still be a train wreck this year because they don't have roster balance in the trenches, et cetera. They've got some problems. Florida State is adding guys that are either really, really good or they pretty much didn't bring them in. Like Colorado's still bringing in depth pieces, et cetera. It's just one comparison. Auburn, they've done a great job. They got 3 defensive linemen. They got a starter out of Penn State that's a receiver, et cetera. They've done a great job, but they still lost quite a few guys yet. I think they're teeter-tottering anywhere between 6 and 8 wins. I think if I had to pick one or the other, it'd be 8 because they got 3 D linemen, kind of like Florida State. They're one of the few schools that really hit at that spot. That's huge for them. That's how you win football games, especially in the SEC. With the trenches, Florida State's done it forever. That's why those schools will win more than what we probably originally thought heading into this season. I thought Florida State was a 9-win team until I really broke this down. If I had to pick now, and I think FanDuel still has Florida State at 9.5 wins because of this portal addition, looking at the raw numbers and everything they brought in at key spots, if I had to pick, I'd say they'd win 10 instead of 9. I mean, it's close, but that would be my projection. Then you kind of look at Notre Dame. They picked and choose because they didn't have a need like some other schools at key spots. They had a lot of 5th and 6th-year seniors. This ought to be a pretty good Notre Dame team. They're probably not the greatest example for this. They actually need more guys to leave just to get down to 85. They got a bunch of seniors and 5th-year guys that are just trying to get their degrees at Notre Dame, prestigious school. But they're being selective, kind of like Florida State, and it's unique. Miami, I have no idea how to explain the 33. And if somebody wants to comment on this, by all means. It's just really interesting to me that the culture there, they're trying to change it, and that, good for them. But Florida State and other schools, I think, are ahead. Miami's taken a risk with bringing in so many portal guys, spending a lot of money, but they did get Damian Martinez, who's a tremendous running back. Love that kid's skill. And they got Cam Ward. So offensively, they're going to be explosive. They just got a receiver out of Houston that's a good player, et cetera. They got good guys, but they're still not done with what they need, in my opinion. And if they don't hit something at the safety position, all that may be for naught. They still have a hole. So the numbers out are going to hurt them. They just lost the guy that they'd gotten, and they lost another guy that they'd signed about a year ago out of the secondary, and they lost 2 guys early to the draft. So their portal situation's a little bit awkward in a key position. Southern Cal, I wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole, and 29 guys out at a school like Southern Cal. That seems high to me. They've been there long enough now to kind of know their roster. Maybe they push some of them out, but SC needs numbers in the trenches in particular, and I'm not sure they got there. If anybody has any information on what's going on with Southern Cal, not that a lot of people that cover or watch Florida State would know, I'd be curious because I thought that one was crazy. Like Arkansas is 34, but it's Arkansas. That program's a train wreck. USC shouldn't be in that spot. So, again, these are just some of the top teams that it's goofy, but here's the last one, and this one blows my mind. Michigan won the national title last year, and while I'm well aware that Harbaugh left, and they literally lost every single defensive coach, everyone, that's pretty rough. According to what I have, there are 3 guys in and like 21 out. How is that possible? Like some of the guys are walk-ons and stuff, I get it, but you still need depth pieces like that, practice players. They lost some key guys, too. I don't know anything about Sherrod Moore except for the few interviews I've seen, and I hope he does well. But that does not seem like a good start for Michigan. So culture leads to the portal, and now the question is it going up or down? I'm a little curious about Michigan, and if anybody has any info on that, I'd love to hear it, too. But all these schools, like these are prominent programs, Florida State's doing as good or better than all of them. Now, I didn't go over 50 schools. But it still seems a little odd, doesn't it, that a school like Florida State, who's kind of made their way with it, not that many schools are modeling themselves the same way. Like Florida State I know this, they could have taken a few other guys, and they did not. This goes back to a podcast I talked about this earlier this week. Culture, culture, culture. You are not going to win or even come close to winning a national championship. And make no mistake, that's Florida State's objective. Unless your culture is good and you don't just have to throw money at team or players to build your team. That's the National Football League. The money has to be the secondary part of it because when chips are down, guys that are mercenaries tend to not really help you out. I think Florida State has done a really good job of towing that line. And it's one of the reasons that Florida State's one of the best programs of the country. And I think they're slowly inching to a point where they're going to be a top 4 program most years, barring, again, major injuries at a quarterback spot or just one spot getting decimated by injury. So something to think about. And before we go into the last segment here, I have one question for you. Is there a portal group that you would prefer over the one that Florida State has, in conjunction with how Florida State has begun to recruit the high school ranks? They're being selective with 25 and not taking too many guys early, which I applaud, by the way. I think it's the right route. But name a school that has done as well at evaluating against their peers, again, Michigan, teams like Texas, whatever. Give me a school that you look at that list and you're like, I would rather have them. How many? You could say there's a few. I'm not saying there's not. But compared to where Florida State was just a year and a half ago, did you really see this coming, I guess, is the other question. So would you trade it out? Were you surprised? I don't know if I'd trade it out, and I am surprised it happened this quickly. I think they're a year ahead of pace compared to where Norvell and his staff came in and where the roster was at, especially O-line. They addressed that much better than most programs would. Fairly early, did the best they could, and now they're trending in the right direction. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about a few of the schools that have really struggled in some ways with the portal and why you can be up here, but very quickly move down the ladder and have people pass you. That's next on Locked On Seminoles. Have you downloaded Monopoly Go yet? It's the hit game that is off the original classic, Monopoly, the board game that many of you know and love. It's an opportunity to play with your friends in many different ways, and you can download it right to your phone. Unique stickers you can trade with friends to complete albums for big prizes, cool new playing pieces to travel with boards, and hilarious emojis for taunting friends when you smash their buildings or heist their vaults. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. Include their own unique margin mini games like digging for treasure or robot pachinko machine, and there's always new timed events to help you win big, make massive multipliers for everything you win. There's always something fun to discover with Monopoly Go, so get off the bench and go download it now on the Google Play Store or in the App Store. Game on. When you think college football over the last 15 years, there's an opportunity to look at it from a perspective of Alabama and a few other schools being big-time programs, but it's not very easy to say there are other schools right there with them. Georgia, Clemson, Ohio State, there's just a handful that have really been dominant in that same time, even for small stretches with Bama. But here's something that I found very odd when we're kind of wrapping this up, talking about the portal. Florida State and some other schools too have passed them by. And I'm not picking on Kalen DeBoer, but it's just very weird to me. On3's transfer portal does not have Alabama in the top 50, not top 10, not top 25, not top 50. If things do not transfer well from your system out west to down south, things can go awry. And that was one of the things that I was personally curious about when Norvell first came to Tallahassee for Memphis. Now, that's not as big a jump, literally, physically, like the distance is different, but I think the culture is part of that. I have heard continuously there was some gaffes with the back office and how things were handled with recruiting, et cetera, and I'm guessing that that's translated to some of the transfers and stuff. They just had another couple guys leave that were pretty good DBs, Des Ricks, et cetera. They've really struggled to keep a lot of the top-notch guys, no matter if they were California kids, they were kids local from Birmingham, et cetera, that's 50 minutes from University of Alabama. They've just struggled. I find that very interesting when Florida State has just been very continuously improving. Not perfect, but they've been improving. The other team that I find very odd because, they won the title in 19 and they're good most years. LSU is 46th. They have huge needs on the D-line. Florida State has killed them in the D-line portal game so far. There's still time. And then the other one with that is they needed DBs. Florida State, I know they'd have taken Earl Little at LSU in a heartbeat. They desperately need DBs, and they didn't get any there either. I found that very odd. So be happy with where Florida State's at, and they're winning the portal game. Make no mistake, like I said at the beginning, if you're going to take anything away from this, they're doing the right things. They're winning with the portal, and the numbers are here. It's basic, and I just used a handful of key schools, but Florida State is winning that way, and they're just improving their program. Now they're to the point, though, with the recruiting and combination with the portal, they can just be so selective. I think they're going to have smaller and smaller chances to have poor seasons moving forward because the roster is just so much more balanced than even what it was going into the 23 season. They don't have major holes like they used to have. Like last year, if they'd had an injury at linebacker, like if Deloach would have missed 3 straight weeks in the middle of the year or something, that'd have been a problem. They're just in a much better spot than they have been. And congrats to everybody at Florida State for making that happen. Thank you once again for making this your first listen each and every day. We truly appreciate it. I welcome you to come back each and every day that you can. I love having this show, and I look forward to having you back on. Everybody have a great night. Thank you much.